The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
And we are live to tape on the W2M Network for the Wrestling to the Max 205 Live review. Good evening or afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, everybody. My name is Harry Broadhurst. I am your host for this show. Joining me once again, I can't get rid of you. You're like the mole on my backside.
I love doing SmackDown 205 with you because I can do it 2 days in a row.
Not that we're going to have much of an episode of the kickoff tomorrow.
No, we will not.
I guess it makes sense that you get to annoy me today.
Exactly.
You know who else is going to be joining me today? The W2M Network's own Gary Vaughan. Hi, Gary.
Hey, guys. I'm glad to join forces with you tonight.
Gary will be helping me with the Mixed Match Challenge match as Brandon found out he was filling in for Liz a little bit too late to be able to watch MMC, and then we went right into doing the SmackDown and now the 205 Live reviews. Therefore, Brandon did not have enough time to listen and watch the Mixed Match Challenge matches. So,
yep, even though you said that some interesting things happened.
Oh, I'll be bringing that up in specificality with Gary a little bit later on. We're going to do 205 Live first like we usually do on this show. Also, a quick shout out before we get started to our producer for the evening for the 205 Live and MMC review, Paul Leazar, coming straight off of a Dallas Stars Florida Panthers game.
What a game. There were as many fights as there were goals, gentlemen, and that number is 7.
Oh, that's amazing.
I missed it.
Yeah, my wife.
The important question is who won?
Oh, Dallas won 6-1.
Yeah, 6-1.
Well, that might explain why there's so many fights.
4 of them took place in the first period, so.
Okay, maybe not, then.
Oh, boy. So, note to self, my wife will be very happy to see this on thestars.com. So, thank you for letting me know.
It should be a treat.
Oh, well. Okay. Yeah. What, if there's anything to get her going, that's it. So, yeah. Well, let's get this show along, guys.
As I told Paul while we were discussing this, while we were doing the SmackDown review, Brandon and I were, and to think there are still people who don't like hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Horrible people. All right, let's get to it, shall we, Brandon?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is your 205 Live review for January 23rd, 2018. Daniel Bryan. Wait, what? Okay, then. Daniel Bryan starts us off on 205 Live tonight and announces that Enzo Amore has relinquished the 205 Live Cruiserweight Championship and is no longer a part of 205 Live. I guess they really couldn't just come out and say, yo, Enzo's stupid ass got fired. Bryan drops the bombshell, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on in the show, that a 205 Live general manager will be announced next week on the show, and they'll be dealing with the current title situation and to make sure that the brand becomes something that the fans deserve because it holds a soft spot for Bryan since he was a commentator on the original Cruiserweight Classic. I guess Bryan doing this carries a little bit more clout than Angle would have done doing so on Monday night. Agree or disagree, Brandon?
I definitely agree with that. Yes, in terms of the fact that technically it's supposed to be a Raw branded show. It doesn't make as much sense on a storyline level, but in the sense of the fact that Bryan was one of the commentators on the Cruiserweight Classic and he was a Cruiserweight and all of that, it definitely holds more weight, him saying that, we want to build something that holds up to the history and the prestige of the Cruiserweight Classic, which I hope they actually do. I hope they're not just simply, talking out of their you-know-what.
Blowing smoke up our you-know-whats?
Yes, precisely.
Yeah. Because this has gone so well for them in the past. All right.
Exactly.
Let's head into our opening contest here, a 6-man tag team match as Kalisto, Grand Metalik, and the returning Lince Dorado take on the team of Arya Daivari, Tony Nese, and TJP. Congratulations, Arya. You officially have nothing going for you now.
It was nice seeing Lindsay back, finally.
Speaking of which, Lindsay actually picks up the victory with a handspring stunner lethal injection on TJP for the pinfall. Sorry, I had something caught in my throat there. The match itself was okay, I thought. Nothing groundbreaking from these guys here, but just a quick Lucha focus, six-man focus here, one of those trios matches that are kind of the trademark of Lucha Libre. And we actually do see some really good teamwork from the Luchador team of Metalik, Kalisto, and Dorado. Interesting choice to give Dorado the win here on his first night back on the brand in quite some time, but not surprising given the fact that the title situation is kind of in flux. Right, Brandon?
Yeah, I like it because Lindsay was one of my, favorite guys on the Cruiserweight division when he was around in the beginning of 205 Live. And I was very disappointed, and I even, after a while, I kind of looked up to see if he was still with the company because of how long he was off of TV for. So it's nice seeing him back again and picking up the win. Hopefully he gets a little bit of a push. Maybe whatever they end up doing with this whole Cruiserweight Championship thing, if they make it into a tournament or something, maybe they put him in it. One thing that would kind of be interesting, I just thought of when I was talking about this, is maybe do kind of a mini Cruiserweight Classic with all of the rules and the the pomp and circumstance that they had of the Cruiserweight Classic with the more formal fight based patting down and handshake and all of that for this tournament. Like if they do decide to do a tournament for the title, that would be nice to see.
Well, not to mention you have people involved in the division now that weren't necessarily involved when the Cruiserweight Classic happened, such as a guy like a Hideo Itami.
That is also very true. The one thing that I'm curious about, going back to the whole announcement of the GM thing, we didn't hear anything about this beforehand. Is this kind of a sudden, now we're going to do it because we have to do something because of the whole Enzo situation? Or were they planning on this from the get-go?
I honestly think this is one of those things where they're like, oh crap, we have a situation and no authority figure to handle it. We better get somebody for that role. Because theoretically, Kurt Angle would be in charge of the Cruiserweights, but if Angle's not at SmackDown when this situation occurs where Enzo gets fired, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Don't worry, we're not just going to completely sweep that under the rug. We will touch on that briefly later. They realize that they need somebody to handle Cruiserweight-specific affairs here that can go work in association with Kurt Angle in order to help make 205 Live both the best division and the best program that it can be. As far as Lindsay Dorado goes, I'm actually going to see if my producer is still with me here. Paul, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
As somebody who shares the affinity for Shikara that I do here, it's kind of interesting to see where Lindsay is now, considering the fact that we almost saw him die inside of a wrestling ring a decade ago.
I think you and I actually reviewed that show for Woo. That's like a long time ago, but yeah. It was mind-boggling to me just to see him in the CWC and the fact that he's still here, basically 2 years on, and not really being much of anything other than just sort of a perennial lower mid-carder, essentially, to suddenly turn around and get a win. And with Enzo gone, it's a new direction for the Cruiserweights, and it's going to be interesting to see who they decide to push, who they decide to pick up, and see if they can't try to find somebody else to help carry the load forward.
I certainly hope that they use more of the original guys from the Cruiserweight Classic. It seems like basically ever since 205 Live was created, they've basically shied away from the original CWC guys and have decided to bring in other guys to try to push the division.
I'm going to disagree with that.
And now Enzo.
See, I'm going to disagree with that, Brandon, because I would be perfectly okay with a return of Neville to the Cruiserweight division.
I mean, I'd be okay with it, but, I mean, maybe this is just my favoritism because I was such a huge fan of the Cruiserweight Classic, but it's kind of like, you spent all of that time building the division around these guys, and you're not really doing much of anything with them now.
All right, that takes us into a Drew Gulak promo where he talks about once again bringing back a Drewtopia to the 205 Live division, especially one that he hopes will be with a general manager that he can work with. We will have our speculations on the general manager a little bit later on in the program. We move on to the next contest here, which is going to be the aforementioned Hideo Itami taking on Jack Gallagher. Or as Nigel likes to call him, Jack Gallagher, because apparently his British accent betrays him. Pretty solidly worked match here. Nothing too special, nothing to write home about here. I think these guys are kind of holding back because this is only the beginning stages of their feud, though. I feel like there's going to be definitely more to come between these two. That being said, I did want to get your thoughts on the finish to the match, and specifically Itami debuting a new finisher, a cravat hook into a Nita facebuster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little disappointed that they're taking away, his iconic that he created move. I guess I get why they did it. But it's kind of disappointing that it was such a knee-jerk reaction by WWE.
Brian Kendrick's medical bills disagree with that assessment.
I'll agree with that, but I mean, it's the first time that it's ever happened, so it's, it was a fluke accident that, he's done this move, and I mean, even WWE, they've had, CM Punk do it, for years, and no one has gotten injured, so, it's kind of crazy that, one fluke accident would suddenly have them be like, oh, you can't do that anymore.
Okay, incorrect. Punk broke Mysterio's nose, and he broke Snitsky's nose with a go to sleep.
True. Oh, I'm not saying that that accidents don't happen, but, they didn't have a knee-jerk reaction back then. Why are they suddenly having one now?
Because Hideo Itami doesn't have the clout that CM Punk had at the time.
True.
That being said here, do you think we continue the feud between Itami and Gallagher?
I think we do, especially with what you were talking about, how it seems like they're kind of holding back. I think this is leading to something, and especially with this whole thing with the championship, and if they do decide to do a tournament, either have this as a first round match or have it lead into, an Itami versus Gallagher match later on in the tournament, and that be the blow off for this feud. That would be a nice way to finish this off and have them just go out and go all out.
Akira Tozawa's Vince McMahon impersonation earns this show a 10 out of 10.
That was great.
I won't ruin it any further than I already have for the people who haven't seen it. Make sure you watch it. It's well worth going out of your way to see. This is how they can do comedy in these kind of bits and get away with it here, because Tozawa was gold here.
Tozawa was great on the mic.
Despite the language barrier, which is odd because you see people like Asuka and Shinsuke kind of struggling with the English connections, the connectivity to the English fans here, whereas Tozawa's pretty much got it nailed.
I mean, Tozawa, he's not, the most fluent, but he makes it work. They either it's him writing it himself or them writing it in a way where he doesn't have to say anything drastic to where you're going to have any language barrier, but, it's still effective.
So we kind of talked about the fact of the 205 Live main event at the end of the SmackDown Live review, Brandon. I will go on record as saying this. I stated it kind of backhandedly during the SmackDown Live review. I will officially state it right here and right now. This is my current leader for match of the year, match of the month for January. And by proxy, the current leader for match of the year in the WWE between Cedric Alexander and Mustafa Ali. You know how good this match was, Brandon?
How good?
This crowd was silent when this match started. Mm-hmm. As is the case for most of these 205 Live matches, because the crowds have been conditioned not to care. There is a very, very vocal "This is awesome" chant towards the end of the match, and one that I 100% agree with. Mm-hmm. They managed to get a crowd that did not care when that original bell rung completely invested in this contest here.
Yeah.
Top to bottom, wonderful work by both gentlemen, and a couple of very scary-looking bumps by Mustafa Ali as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you want to see in the cruiserweight division. High-flying, crazy spots, and I think especially for the fans, it does also help while DC isn't as big as, Brooklyn or Philly or Chicago is. DC is still a pretty big city and a pretty big smarky city. So you've got fans that know these guys who know the cruiserweight division, who like the cruiserweight division. So, this definitely went over a lot better than it would have elsewhere. But, this match was definitely a good way of, like we were talking about before, if this is kind of, them trying to change the identity and change the image of 205 Live, this was a very good way to start it. By having them, go all out, put on a great match, put some great high-flying spots on, and just have a good overall match. And they gave them another thing that was good, and, I talked about it earlier, how they ran over a little bit as compared to what we were expecting with them only having a half hour. These guys need time in order to show off what they've got. You can't put the cruiserweights into squash matches or, small 5-10 minute matches. That's what made the Cruiserweight Classic work so well, was that they had 20 minutes, 20, 25, 30 minutes to go all out in each match. So this definitely worked. This is what you want to see as a Cruiserweight division. And the fact that the fans got behind them and got a "This is awesome" chant going, maybe that'll show Vince and co. that, hey, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, you mentioned the apologies for the delay there. Had a little bit of a Skype issue there, but you mentioned the fact that there was matches like this in the Cruiserweight Classic that got the crowd so invested in stuff. And while I think that maybe being on the road touring with SmackDown's probably not the best idea for 205 Live, I think that if they can have these kind of matches that get the fans emotionally invested in them, then the division will have a future with the WWE. Mm-hmm. All right, so do you want to do our conversations about Enzo and the GM before the rating or after?
Let's do it. Well, no, let's rate the show in and of itself, and then we'll talk about the elephant in the room.
Well, because if they want to, Gary and Paul can jump in for the conversation about the Cruiserweight general manager, as well as, I'm sure they'll talk more about the whole Enzo Amore situation on the Thursday episode of Wrestling to the Max, available here on the W2M network. Mm-hmm. So they don't have to chime in on that one if they don't want to, but at least the general manager thing, I don't imagine would get covered on the main show, so it's something we can talk about here. So let's go ahead and give a final rating to tonight's episode of 205 Live, as well as our one-word review, Brandon. So where do you fall on a scale of 1 to 10?
This was a good, solid 205, and especially considering what we've seen in the past and the uncertainty going into this show with the whole Enzo situation, I'm going to give it a 9. You had a good, solid 6-man tag match with someone who we haven't seen in a while, that a lot of people, enjoyed seeing in the ring, in Lince Dorado coming back. You had a solid match there. Let me go back even before that. You had a very clear-cut situation Daniel Bryan coming in and just saying straight up what was going on, pushing the direction of the division, saying, we're moving on from this, and we're going to get things back on track in 205. Basically reassuring the fans of the show that, this isn't going to be the end. This is, we're going to reset and refocus on building the division. So that was a good sign there. You had the funny backstage stuff with Gulak and Tozawa. The Itami Jack Gallagher match, like we talked about, it was a little underwhelming as compared to what they can do, but I'm sure we'll get more from them. And then, like you said, the Cedric Alexander versus Mustafa Ali match, that's exactly what you want to see in the Cruiserweight division, and it really redefined what 205 Live can be.
I'm going to state that while I definitely agree that Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander is a prime example of what this show can be, I don't think this was the perfect show.
No, it wasn't the perfect show. That's why I didn't give it a 10.
I don't think it was quite up to the level of where you put it as well. I don't think it was a 9. It definitely wasn't a 10. I fall somewhere around the 7.5 range because they addressed the elephant in the room without overtly addressing it. And then they set the stage for what could be in the Cruiserweight division going forward. A lot of this is going to depend on the follow-up.
Well, yes, of course.
How are they going to be able to make tonight's episode of 205 Live matter going forward once we find out who the general manager will be next week? Therefore, I am going to go with an optimistic 7.5. And my one word to describe tonight's episode of 205 Live is refreshing. Because this is the kind of episode that I expected 205 Live to be on a weekly basis.
I'll agree with your word, and I'll also say impressive. Not only in terms of how they handled the situation with Enzo, also the impressive match between Alexander and Mustafa Ali, but also the fact, and a lot of us, even some of the biggest fans of 205 Live, myself included, felt that, no matter what they did, they would never be able to stop this from happening, but Cedric and Mustafa proved that they can get fans off of their hands and actually pay attention to them. And that's really impressive considering what's been going on with 205 Live in the past.
All right, guys, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, what do you say we have this group conversation right now, and then obviously you guys will address the Enzo Amore thing tomorrow on Wrestling to the Max.
For sure.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk GMs here. Do you guys have any ideas of where you're going? Me and Brandon were talking about this before we started recording here, and we were talking about who we would think would make viable candidates to become the new official 205 Live general manager. I had 2 people in mind immediately, and then one off-the-wall solution as well, which I think would work with regards to the history of the division. The first name that sprung to mind for me was Goldust. Just because of his involvement with the show over the course of the last couple of weeks, his involvement with Cedric Alexander, you could kind of have him tell that story that while he's Cedric's friend, he understands that Cedric has to win the title on his own.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm totally sold on that idea. It certainly does make sense within the context, but I feel like it's a little too simple. Honest to God, I don't want to see Goldust just translate into a non-wrestling role either.
Yeah, that's more Dustin Rhodes.
I'll talk about this more once I'm doing my predictions and what I want to see, but that wouldn't work for me.
I'd rather have R-Truth.
Little Jimmy for Cruiserweight Champion, please, Lord.
Yes.
Could just give the belt to Hornswoggle and kill the fucking division again. Anyway, my second choice, and they kind of teased it on air tonight, is none other than Nigel McGuinness.
That was actually going to be one of my picks as well.
I feel like Nigel has the credibility and the promo ability to pull off a role like this flawlessly.
And was he a cruiserweight when he wrestled?
No, not technically. He wrestled at around the 240-pound mark.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Nigel's a big old boy.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that it would be a really wise pick because of what you just said, Harry. Not only that, I just think he's so underutilized in general in WWE. I think it'd be perfect to have him, especially with no UK show for him to go and spend a lot of time with. I think it'd be good.
My third and final pick, and this is my out-of-nowhere pick here, just based on the reaction that he got on Raw 25 and the fact that I would really like to see him back involved with the company again. I would love to see Eric Bischoff be the guy in charge of the cruiserweights.
That was my second pick as well, actually, because, I mean, while, yes, he was more, at least on screen, he was more in the NWO and more focused on the heavyweights. If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was a big advocate for the cruiserweights in WCW when it first started.
He was responsible for a lot of them getting signed from ECW, guys such as Psychosis, La Parka, Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yeah, so he's been a big advocate for the cruiserweights ever since WCW, which is where the cruiserweight division, at least back then, really took off. So, I could totally see him being a very viable option.
Yeah, and, I followed Eric Bischoff for years, and I think he, definitely would fit the role perfect for all those reasons. I really do question if he's interested in doing something on a regular basis, but I would love it. Have no problem.
Yeah. That would 100% be my thing as well, Gary, is whether or not Bischoff would be willing to go back on the road. Which takes me to my second kind of out-of-nowhere pick for the general manager for 205 Live. And this one right here would be with the caveat that they would have to go back to Full Sail full-time, like they did the Cruiserweight Classic, and that would be William Regal.
I could see that as well. The only thing about that is if we were going to do, or if we were going to do commissioners who are already commissioners of other brands, honestly, especially with how instrumental he was in not only, giving the Cruiserweight division a name, but also in the Cruiserweight Classic, I would be, if we're talking about guys, and this would be a lot easier since he'd be there already, Daniel Bryan as the main GM for 205.
I feel like that's a little rough to try to explain because, you guys mentioned, the Cruiserweights, it's supposed to be a Raw thing, and having a SmackDown general manager in charge just seems like a really, really... It just seems off, as far as the storytelling would go. Now, if they change it and maybe make the Cruiserweights a part of SmackDown or something like that, then that's probably totally okay.
I mean, I'd honestly be perfectly fine with that. Basically make 205 the third hour of SmackDown and have it be under the SmackDown brand, technically, while also being their own thing, so that would free up the space from Raw where, they're not really being used on Raw much at all anyway, but, that would take away from, it would kind of take away from the Cruiserweight division because you wouldn't have that added exposure on free TV with them being on Raw. But besides the champion and the championship feuds, you're not really getting any Cruiserweight stuff on Raw anyway. So
not to mention what you are getting on Monday Night Raw as is right now isn't usually a whole lot anyway.
Exactly. So I'd be perfectly fine with that, honestly, them giving SmackDown 205 and Daniel Bryan just running it.
Well, and going to the William Regal thing that kind of started this, if it was pulled down over to Full Sail and they were just saying, well, let's just take these guys away and just set them all in place, let them focus, I think in a way you get better crowd reactions because a lot of people in the NXT crowd, they start to fall in love with those certain superstars, and you may have a better feel for the 205 Live guys. They start to kind of get more pops and all these different things. But then again, you look at that, I mean, do you still want William Regal to be in charge of both NXT and 205? It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't be a problem. But I kind of still like the idea, William Regal being the NXT guy, 205 having its own GM. It just feels better than sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, unless they did my idea with them going to SmackDown and Daniel Bryan taking control of them, since he has a history with them, I'd much rather have them have their own general manager. In terms of the whole, moving them to Full Sail, I'd be okay with that. Like some people when I saw on some groups when people were talking about it, they were mentioning how that would be an issue because of the timing for the tapings and everything. You wouldn't have to worry about that as much right now because NXT is taping in Atlanta now. So you could easily have 205 have Full Sail as their home, and you would just have to worry about 205 without having to worry about NXT. And those fans who are losing NXT right now would have something else to go to, so that crowd would be, off the chains.
The center stage thing is a one-off deal because of the way that stuff lined up as far as scheduling.
Well, I think aren't they doing another taping after
February? The next taping for NXT is at center stage as well because of Full Sail being previously unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
Any other names that stick out as possibilities for general manager? You guys?
I just want to say this. I gave my two distinctive options. Kind of three, tossing in Daniel Bryan as well. But the one thing, just on a general level, I know two of the three names that I tossed out aren't these, but especially with what Bryan said tonight, with them wanting to revitalize the division and bring it back to what it was during the Cruiserweight Classic, I just hope it's either A, someone who was a Cruiserweight, or B, has some sort of connection to the Cruiserweight division, whether in WCW or in the Indies or somewhere where it doesn't feel like it's just some random person who doesn't understand the Cruiserweight style. Like Goldust, I feel would be, yes, I know he's done stuff in the Cruiserweight division over the last couple of weeks, but I just don't feel like he would really fit. I mean, I didn't like what they did with him last week either. I just don't think he would really fit the mold that they're trying to build now.
Paul, Gary, either of you guys have anybody to add to the discussion?
I'm in all seriousness and kind of jokingly, Alicia Fox.
Wow.
She has a very small part in the 205 Live history, but she's not being used for anything else. And honest to God, I'd love to see a crazy person running this show.
I mean, it would make for some entertaining moments, but I don't like that just because it would kind of destroy what they're trying to do now.
Yeah, let me state for the record that I hate that you just threw that out into the universe as a possibility.
You gotta know she is written down on that list somewhere in that backstage area in WWE, though.
Oh, God.
You haven't heard mine yet.
One up me, Gary.
I'll give you the good, bad, and the ugly. How about that?
Oh,
okay.
God.
So the good would be what we've already discussed, Nigel McGuinness. Put that to bed. We've kind of already touched on that. I think probably more jokingly, but I would love to see a personal favorite of mine would be Juventud Guerrero. I think he'd be lots of experience. Somebody who could walk in, and I just love to see it.
He can still go too.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who I just thought of? I know he's doing a ton
You're
of
interrupting Gary.
Sorry. I just thought of one person, though, real
Give
quick.
it to me.
I know that he's doing a ton of things, and this is a huge outlier for a number of reasons, and people were wanting to wrestle more, but I would love to see Chris Jericho.
Oh, the busiest man on earth right now.
Jericho's got too many commitments elsewhere, too many irons in the fire.
Yeah.
You were saying, Gary, although
Okay.
I'm about to regret this.
The last one, and the one I think WWE is going to choose because they're WWE, Brie Bella.
You know what? That actually would not surprise me, given the fact that it was Brian who made the announcement that they were going to bring in a GM.
And it's also a part of breaking history, guys. This whole historic thing. The first 205 Live GM, a woman. So.
But see, that doesn't really break history or anything because they've had female GMs before.
But the first general manager is a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I see where Gary's coming with this, actually.
I see where you're coming from, but I agree that it's definitely the ugly.
I would argue that Alicia would be uglier than Brie in this circumstance.
At least Alicia has a tie here. Especially if Cedric's being positioned as sort of the center stage guy now. Having her back and ruin his day might be interesting.
Does that mean that when he gets recovered from his injury, that Noam Dar is going to have to start courting Alicia Fox again?
Hey, at least we get to hear him say it again.
This is true. I do miss the Alicia Fox.
Alicia Fox.
Fox. Sounds like he's saying a dirty. He sounds like he's saying a dirty word with his accent.
Yes, it does.
Oh boy.
All right. Anybody else we want to throw out there? Or is that going to wrap up the discussion for the general manager?
I think it's the best I got.
Yeah.
This is turning into. This is going to turn into the length of a W2M special.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and hit real quickly. Brandon and I will hit the Enzo Amore situation. Paul, Gary, where can they find your guys' opinion about this whole situation? Because I'm sure it's coming sooner rather than later.
Well, you can come find us Friday morning for our next episode, which will be part 2 for this week, episode 283. And that'll be definitely full of content and great news and stuff, but that'll give you that big news topic. We'll be jumping in all about the Enzo Amore situation. So check it out there, Wrestling to the Max on the network.
All right, thank you very much, Gary. I will talk to you again here shortly. All right, Brandon, let's go ahead and touch on the elephant in the room when it comes to the Cruiserweight division. Let's talk Enzo Amore here. All right, so he went from suspended to fired in the span of 24 hours after it was revealed that Enzo knew about the pending charges and did not tell the WWE. Okay, first of all, Enzo, and forgive my language here, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
In no universe is it cool, especially not the WWE. Okay, that's a terrible pun. I feel bad. I should feel bad. I do feel bad. In no universe is it okay to conceal something like that from your employer.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
That was perfect grounds for immediate dismissal, and I have no issue with the WWE firing him for not coming straight to them with something like this.
I mean, yes, he was, I mean, unless, the only explanation that some people have been mentioning online is that, he knew that, especially with his past with the company, that if he revealed anything when it first happened, he would have been suspended immediately anyway, and as a result probably would not have gotten the push and what he's gotten so far. Yes, he may not have been fired, but it's one of those situations of, just looking at, solely on the basis of, what he got out of it. Would he have gotten what he got after after the dust settled? If he had gotten suspended, would he still have gotten, the push that he had in October. If he had revealed this and he had gotten suspended.
So basically, what you're saying it would have been damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Precisely.
Well, and I can agree with that to an extent here, but at the same time, this is a nationally recognized and globally recognized company. They can't have something like this coming as a surprise to them and having no way to deal with it.
What I'm saying is, by not revealing it, he was, dooming himself to be fired as soon as it came out. But if he had revealed it, he would have been suspended immediately, and even if he had gotten cleared, I feel like in terms of just looking at it solely in terms of, what he would have gotten out of the company on a wrestling basis, he would not have been pushed nearly as much. They would have moved on from him by that point, and he would have been, a forgotten memory by the time this all settled.
That being said, with regards to the allegations that are out there against Enzo Amore, I am firmly of the belief that every man is innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
That being said, if Enzo Amore did do what Enzo Amore is being accused of, he has no business ever being involved in the world of professional wrestling again.
Of course.
There are certain things that you don't do as a human being, and assaulting somebody of the opposite gender is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So if it turns out that it was not true, that Enzo got a raw deal here and he got screwed up by false allegations, then I would be okay with the WWE giving Enzo another chance, assuming that Enzo can get himself in check and kind of tone down his Enzo-ness.
Well, see, that's going to be that's going to be the interesting thing. First off, let me say, reaffirm what you just said. If this does turn out to be true, then obviously he's done from ever wrestling anywhere ever again. But if this does turn out to be false, which it looks more and more likely that may be the case, first off, I hope the book is thrown at this woman for doing this, because it undermines everything when it comes to any sort of allegation like this. This stuff is starting to get out of hand, and it seems like every new case, makes you question it more and more, which isn't a good thing. When it comes to Enzo and wrestling afterwards, if this does turn out to be false, while ideally I would love to see him come back to WWE, and hopefully maybe, if this does turn out to be false, maybe even just solely by the firing in and of itself, it's kind of an awakening for Enzo, that shows just how quickly this can be taken away from you. And maybe it humbles him a little bit, and he doesn't have the antics behind the scenes as he did before. He's going to have a long road to rebuild what he had coming back. Although, especially, while maybe not as much as when he was with Cass, he still has a big following. So, a return for him would garner a huge pop, definitely. But unless he can prove to WWE that, he's not going to be doing what he's been doing, and bringing the negative publicity to them, I have a feeling that even if this does get resolved in his favor, he will more than likely end up elsewhere, more than likely a certain promotion that is hailing out of Canada now.
Canada by way of Orlando?
Yes, precisely.
Yeah. And let me state for the record that if it comes down that he is not guilty, that I would have no issues at all with him signing with Impact Wrestling.
Neither would I. And it would actually make me kind of want to watch Impact.
That being said, if this blows up in his face in any way and Impact Wrestling still tries to sign him, they can officially F off forever.
I don't think they would. Even Impact, plus you would think that if he does get convicted of anything, he'd be going to jail for a decent bit. So they wouldn't be able to sign him or do anything with him anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, but at the same time, we've seen a wrestler get away with murder too, so.
True. But I don't think Enzo quite has the clout that, certain other people do.
Yeah, we won't mention any Jimmy Snuka names.
You just did.
That was the joke. Thanks for killing it. Appreciate it. All right, Bisco, thanks for filling in for the 205 Live review, man. I'd like to say I hope to talk to you next week here on the show, but I really don't. I like Liz to be back. Maybe we can do a third co-host for the SmackDown and 205 Live review since you're on basically every week anyway.
Yep. I might as well jump in as a third host every week.
Screw it. Let's talk to Sean. We'll see if we can't make that happen. All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Bisco. Talk to you tomorrow.
I might stick around just to hear what happened on Mixed Match.
That's fine. Hey, Gary, you're tagged in.
All right, I'll take that hot tag. Let's do this, man.
Reach out for the hot tag.
It is match 2 of the Mixed Match Challenge here for the WWE on Facebook Watch as Big E and Carmella, because that's not random as take on the team of Miz and Asuka, who are apparently Asuka, which I'll admit is actually kind of clever.
Very clever.
So, you didn't get to have the full experience because you said you were having a conversation with Amanda, who frankly still is a saint for dealing with you. So,
yeah.
You may have missed it or they may have edited it out by the time you got to watch on a replay. The biggest thing to me for this show, for this episode of Mixed Match Challenge, was Mike Chioda's screw-up. If you watched it live and you were paying attention, you clear as day heard Mike Chioda, a couple of minutes left in the match, lean into Carmella and say, by the way, Asuka's going over.
Oh, boy. Chioda, come on, how long have you done this? Really? Boy. A little bit more discretion.
Well, one of the disadvantages of HD microphones everywhere but the kitchen sink.
Let me just chime in real quick. Is this a good? This may be a good sign. Does this mean that the matches aren't fully determined until like the middle of the match, based on how people are reacting? Maybe.
I mean, theoretically, that could be possible, but I would assume that for most of the people involved in this tournament, they have an idea of how the matches are going to go.
Mm-hmm. But maybe they are changed. Maybe it's something where it may be they may have an idea of who will be going over, but maybe they'd be willing to change it on the fly, perhaps.
I think that's it. I think that they want to make sure, just in case someone gets injured or some kind of quirky thing happens, they can, flip the switch and say, okay, go ahead, just tell them something's different. So.
Well, don't do it in front of an HD microphone, at least.
No.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised they still do that. I mean, my guy, John Cena, is one of the worst at this. I mean, he's always calling those moves where you can clearly hear it sometimes. So,
shout out to Matthew Gregg, because I am 100% certain this is going to make Botchamania. As far as the match itself goes, honestly, in my opinion, did you get to watch the first match in the MMC?
I sure did, yeah. And,
as far as the match itself goes, kind of a step down in terms of in-ring quality, but given the participants of this match, not really a surprise.
Yeah, exactly. And, when you get the New Day involved in anything, not saying that they're bad in the ring, but there's lots of distractions, right? I mean, that's kind of the way things work with them. So I enjoyed this. I think it was more of a spectacle for, you did have also Carmella involved in this. So I think overall you got a situation where in that first match they teased, of course, Finn Balor and Nakamura, how they had Japanese history and all that. That was, fun. But they kind of had the other thing going on, of course, with the ladies, and they were a big focus. And in this one, it was more of a cat and mouse game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely a lot of Carmella trying to avoid Asuka until we got into that home stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention you had the chicanery with the foam letter L that Carmella handed Asuka as well.
It was Corey Graves who did the whole Sesame Street reference. I love that.
Corey was on fire for somebody with Aunt Jemima in his hair.
Yeah. Oh boy! I mean, you gotta love it though. The significance, the L handed in Asuka's freak out, which terrified Carmella to no end, scaring her. I love it. I think that was one thing Carmella you got to give her credit for. She really sold that really well. You would really thought she was terrified, which maybe it was real. Because I'll be honest with you, if I'm in front of Asuka, I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, I ain't trying to get on Asuka's bad side or her good side, probably.
Yeah.
I would rather be on no side of Asuka. Yeah. I will happily stand in the background and watch.
Sure. What the situation goes, though, I mean, what do you think, Harry? Because you got the first match, you got this match. I think they did a decent job, of playing off 50-50 with both the male and the females. It wasn't, one got a stronger side than the other. They told a little different stories, but I think it was nice that they were very balanced.
Well, we kind of talked about this last week here on the review, and I'm going to bring Brandon back for this one here. That we feel like there's a way in order to improve the abilities that they can have by doing these mixed tag matches by kind of instituting tornado tag rules in them or lucha tag rules in these matches. Mm-hmm. Where you won't have the downtime of the partners waiting to come into the ring there. It's basically what happens is either all four people are legal all the time, or as soon as your partner hits the floor, you can come into the ring. Because my biggest complaint about these matches has been the downtime in between the tags.
Yeah.
That's very fair. I'm right there with you on that because I think that lucha style would be the best option for me, in my opinion. I think that would keep things going, no dead time like you're saying here. And not only that, this is a social media thing. This is kind of like when they did the Saturday Morning Slam, if you remember that. It was really keyed and geared towards keeping things going, never really any downtime because, kids need to keep their attention going. Otherwise, if they get bored, they change the channel. Same goes here. I think not for the fact that the adults in the situation get bored, but I think you're right. There is a little downtime. You kind of feel like it doesn't need to be there.
When you get a chance to watch this match, Brandon, you'll kind of see that they were able to fill the gaps a little bit better this week than they did. But like we talked about last week on this show here, I feel like the downtime in between the matches is going to kill them.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger thing, I think we talked about it last week, the bigger issue that I have, and especially with this one in particular, is a lot of the teams just don't make sense.
Well, I think that they're doing the videos with the social media and the tie-ins to the social medias, the Twitter, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, in order to kind of give you an idea of the personalities and why they are teamed, though.
I get that, but, I haven't really watched many of their videos, but, especially Miz and Asuka, it's they're two completely polar opposites, both in terms of alignment and in terms of how they handle themselves in the ring.
See, I think that's the point here, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I think the point is that they're such polar opposites that the question is going to be how well are they able to get along within the confines of actually having a competition with each other as teammates.
No, and it's the mixture of those worlds. I mean, let's just look at Carmella and New Day, right? I mean, it's a mixture. You get the New Day's craziness, kind of like with Carmella's goofy kind of, trying to be hip thing. And then you look at Miz and Asuka. I mean, Asuka's dangerous. She's really scary. But then you have the Miz who just talks and talks and talks. And mixing those worlds together, it's kind of fun. I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying the weird mixtures they're putting together here.
Well, I kind of just thought of something, and it's kind of bad that I have to bring this up considering what came out today, but Miz and Asuka kind of remind me of, the way Enzo and Cass were at the end, where it's Miz is talking all the time, and then he has to have Asuka save him.
And I think that there's a way to be able to play off that dynamic going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any question that if Miz and Asuka lose in this tournament, Miz is eating the pin.
Oh, definitely.
But let me ask you a question here, Gary. It's something that I was kind of thinking about myself here now that we have it officially announced for the second round of this tournament here. Are you at all surprised that they're going to give away the first interactions in the ring against each other of Sasha Banks and Asuka in a mixed tag team tournament?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised or anything. I think, they're really not making this a deal where it's really carrying over too heavily into everything else they're doing. But, I think it's a fun way of doing it. Not only that, it's almost more of a tease, right? Because they're not getting exactly what you would say that they would get if they were in a singles competition, right? So I think, the distractions and the mixture here kind of changes things up. They do this often, though. They tease you. They'll throw a match with, tag team match with two people you want to see really go at it. I think they did the same thing last week with Nakamura and Finn Balor. I think people. So, I think that's what kind of doing here.
Yeah, I was about to say that they basically did the same thing with Nakamura and Balor last week. So, you're going to get those. Even outside of this, you kind of got it back. Well, you got it you got the match in and of itself, but, you got it with AJ and Nakamura with their stare down and everything. Yes, it wasn't a match, but, you also got the AJ versus Balor match at TLC because of, the injuries and whatnot. But, you can do things where it's not really official, like Paul said. It's
Gary.
Gary. Like Gary said, these. I feel like this. It's testing out the waters, but it's more of a fun little thing that they're doing. I don't think it's really going to play into storylines all that much. So they can do these, fun what if type of matchups where it doesn't really impact either one, and sets you up for maybe a few down the line.
I think that maybe having their first major interaction against each other being in this kind of a format might be a mistake to me. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, as you said, this particular tournament, this Mixed Match Challenge tournament, isn't really, what's the word here? Like you guys would say about New Japan, how the Fantastic Mania shows aren't part of the New Japan's calendar year.
Exactly. Or I would kind of describe it, it's a little different because it's it's actually being televised, and more people can see it. But I would compare it kind of to, like, if two people you were anticipating feuding were facing off at a house show. Or, like, the stare downs and the mini matches that you get in New Japan during house shows, during the tag matches. You're not getting the full brunt. You're not going to get there all out. You're not going to get the best match in the world because they're going to save that for a full match that, that they're going to be promoting heavily. But you're going to get a fun little tease for, a potential match moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, anything to add here?
No, not really. I think you guys covered it pretty well.
All right, I think that's going to officially do it. Thanks for sitting in with me, Gary. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man.
All right, so that has been your 205 Live and your Mixed Match Challenge. Easy for me to say that is the second week in a row that I've done that trying to wrap this show up. The 205 Live and Mixed Match Challenge review here on the W2M Network. Brandon, where can everybody hear us technically later tonight here on the
They can hear us for the kickoff. Wednesday nights. Not much to talk about this week, but we'll fill what we can. And then I will be starting a fantasy football podcast following the Super Bowl. And then you and I, which this week really got me ready to start that up, our how the war was won about the Monday Night Wars between WWE and WCW.
I'm impressed that you remembered the name of the show. Bravo, sir. Bravo. Well played. All right.
Yeah.
Paul, Gary, anything to plug here? You guys kind of tossed out a plug already for the W2M episode coming up on Friday. I talked about the Raw review for Raw 25 during the SmackDown review, but if you guys want to throw out a plug for that right now, by all means, feel free.
Yeah, just go check it out. Sean, Paul, and I all got together. Sean's not usually doing the Raw reviews with us, but he jumped on for that. That was a lot of fun. Come check it out. Kind of get our ups and downs of Raw 25. So definitely it's one of those definite listens too. And before I stop talking, I just want to throw out big shout out to Beth Phoenix on that Mixed Match Challenge. She did do better this week. First week, oof. This week, good job. So I had to say that before I got out of here.
I've always really liked Beth, but commentary is not her strong suit.
But you got to admit, this week was better. I'm just saying it was a train wreck last week.
To be fair, that's not saying a whole lot after last week.
I mean, I think she'll probably improve as it progresses.
That's kind of like saying getting punched in the jaw is better than getting kicked in the balls.
Jeez. Oh,
I love Beth as a wrestler. I've always loved Beth as a wrestler. And I actually thought by the women's division standards of the time, she was a pretty strong promo then as well. And her comedic timing in the stuff with Santino was great. But commentary is not her strong suit.
She's learning. She'll figure it out. Sorry.
We'll see. Well, we can say this much. She's at least as good as Lita was.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, I know this is an old school reference, but at least she's better than Mike Adamle.
You quit taking the glorious name of Mike Adamle in vain, sir. No, in all seriousness, I actually don't blame Adamle after what's come out in recent years about the condition that he's suffering from.
Mm.
So I'm not going to sit here and make fun of him, you horrible, horrible monster.
Sorry.
And on that down note, I'll go ahead and turn things back around by mentioning that Wrestling Unwrapped returns with WU Reacts to the Royal Rumble 2018 this Sunday night here, approximately 11:30-ish, assuming Sean doesn't fall asleep again. If he does, expect a text message, Gary.
Yeah.
And Paul. Just saying. If Sean falls asleep, expect a text message. We might just combine the two shows again.
Fair enough.
Not? So, for the sitting in for the Mixed Match Challenge review, Gary Vaughan, my traditional fill-in co-host for SmackDown and 205 Live, Brandon Biskobing, as well as our executive producer, Paul Leazar. My name is Harry Broadhurst. This has been the Wrestling to the Max 205 Live and Mixed Match Challenge review here on the W2M Network, available online at W2Mnet.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you guys next Tuesday night.
The previous podcast is a W2Mnet.com original podcast. For more great content like this, go to W2Mnet.com for the worlds of wrestling, video games, entertainment, and sports.